Liz Venom is a gifted artist. She applies that talent to doing photorealistic tattoos here in Edmonton. She is also often called to bring her tattooing artistry to different countries around the world. Luckily for us, she took time in her busy schedule to chat with us today about her experience being an immigrant in Canada.
Hi, my name's Liz. I am a tattoo artist here in Edmonton. I've been tattooing for about 10 years. It's a really fun job. I get to meet a lot of completely different people from all walks of life. I've always really been interested in art. I have a really strong art background. I used to draw and paint a lot when I was a child, and then continued that when I was a teenager. And honestly, I never really considered tattooing as a career until my husband suggested it because he was covered in tattoos and I like to do art. So it just made sense.
Why did you decide to come to Canada?
My husband is he's half New Zealand, half Canadian. His dad was born in Calgary and immigrated to Australia. And so he was visiting his dad at the time. So we came over to visit, I think it was 2010. Basically, like Australians get a 2-year working holiday visa that you can keep renewing until you turn 30. So we just figured, let's go check it out. He wanted to go back and sort of show me, like, Canada. And I had never been overseas at the time, and we just sort of really fell in love with it.
How did you adjust to the Canadian climate?
Not too bad, actually, because in Melbourne, where I lived most of my adult life in Australia, um, it gets really cold. It's not like really cold by Canada standards, but it's both wet and windy at the same time, and nothing has insulation. So you get out of your car to walk to your job and you're cold. And we have fashionable clothes. We don't have warm clothes. Like dressing for the climate was a thing that took me a really long time to get here. Cause in Melbourne, it can be 2 degrees Celsius and you still go to the bar in a short skirt and heels. It's just what you do, right? So you're always cold. And then you get home into your house and your house has no insulation and heating is super expensive. So you just have like a little space heater. So you have your bedroom's warm and everything else in the house is freezing cold. So when I came to Canada, I was fully expecting to be the same level of cold I've been, but way worse. And it was actually like a real relief that everybody has central heating and your cars have remote starters, and like there's walkways that are warm. And like I was really puzzled as to why I have felt colder more often in Australia than I have here. And the summers here are just gorgeous. So it kind of makes up for it.
What do you like about living in Canada?
Honestly, the people, like, well, I like Australians too, but it's a really welcoming country. Everybody's very, very friendly. And I think people are very generous here.
What challenges did you face as a new immigrant to Canada, and how did you overcome them?
Honestly, just the immigration process in general was an absolute nightmare. It took about 4.5 years. And 2 of those years, I was kicked out of the country. So we had to live apart for 2 years just because of a clerical paperwork error. Yay.
What advice do you have for recent newcomers or people thinking about coming to live in Canada?
Definitely don't don't try and do the paperwork yourself. Basically, I was given the wrong information, so I traveled for work, but I didn't realize I was not allowed to, while my paperwork was processing, travel, which was probably for the best that I did, though, because when I came back, they told me that one, I wasn't allowed to leave the country, and two, the paperwork had been submitted incorrectly in the first place. So I had apparently been working illegally the entire time because they had told me that I was allowed to stay on the conditions of my visa. But then when they had stuffed up the paperwork and sent it back for me to complete a form that didn't exist when I first submitted it, yeah, that had negated my ability to work, but nobody had ever told me that. So yeah, they were like, not only were you working illegally, but you were staying illegally, and then you left illegally, and then you tried to come back in illegally. And they were being very generous, supposedly, and they gave me 10 days to leave the country. And then so once you leave the country, your submitted inland application will never be granted because you left. So you can't submit an outside of country one while you currently have one being processed. And the processing time was almost 2 years. So I had to leave until such time as that was processed and declined before I could submit another one, that then I had to wait outside of the country for that to process entirely before it was accepted and I could actually come back.
Thank you so much for your time today, Liz, and thank you for bringing your talent for art and tattooing to Edmonton.